Everyone, we are live. Gather, gather, gather. I am Danya Crowder, co-owner of the Doc Bookshop, and I have a wonderful show for you because we are kicking off Malcolm X Centennial celebration. So please gather everybody, gather your friends, share it, share it, share it. Especially if you're in Omaha, Nebraska, I need you guys to pop in and show out. This is our time. We are dealing with the map. We are inviting JoAnna LeFlore to our stage to handle and discuss what is going on at the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation, as well as the legacy of Malcolm X. So please, we're going to give you a minute to join, share the link, invite your friends, your cousin, everybody, because it is time for us to deep dive and explore the legacy and the afterlife of Malcolm X, El Haj Malik El Shabazz. So just gather, and I'll introduce my guest for the day. Okay, I'm checking my links to make sure everybody's there because I know I have done a whole show and it was muted and I don't want that kind of action. So I'm just gonna check real quick to see if we live on all these different platforms like Facebook and YouTube. We are live. We are live. You guys, welcome. I have a very special guest today, and I would just want you guys to welcome her to our stage, JoAnna LeFlore-Ejike. Did I pronounce that correct? Did I do a beautiful?
You did good.
I am so animated. Okay, she is the executive director of the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation. This is I think of the best way to kick off our Centennial Celebration Week in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. As a longtime resident of North Omaha, JoAnna enthusiastically offers a thoughtful approach to community development and historic preservation. For over 15 years, she has done this through her efforts in nonprofit administration, cultural arts programming, and public relations. She continues this passion as the executive director of the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation after volunteering there for over a decade. You guys, if we could find anybody to commit to volunteering for a decade, y'all, send them to me, please, Lord. Send them to me. JoAnna holds a master's degree in managerial communication from Bellevue University. I did a graduate program there too, y'all. Fun fact,
Okay.
and a bachelor's degree in journalism and public relations with a minor in Black Studies from the University of Nebraska, Omaha. I was there too. Joanna believes in the power of multicultural communication and empowering those who are hungry to build a better community. This is why we have her today. We're going to have a loaded conversation. We got a lot to talk about, and lives her life through purpose. Joanna gratefully shares her story as a daughter of North Omaha, the birthplace of Malcolm X.
That's right.
Let's welcome her to the Doc Bookshop Live. I don't have my, I can just do my own hand clap. Welcome to the stage. We are so honored and happy to have you just to kick off our week. You guys, we got it scheduled late at night, but if you miss it or if anybody in your family missed it, just please feel free to check out the show again. Let the audience know who you are, what you're doing. I know I did a bio, but just give us little nuggets before we just jump into questions.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your vibrational introduction. It's funny hearing my bio read out loud sometimes, but you made me feel invited to the room. But yeah, I'm a North Omaha girl, and just very grateful to be in this position still, able to be a steward for this good work of making sure people know, that Malcolm was born in Omaha and it was on purpose. So, that is one of my missions. And the cultural preservation part you mentioned is one of my life journeys, I feel. So, we have to understand our plight as a people, not only our plight, but our history before we can move forward. And so that's something that I've been very passionate about. And thank God I was able to roll into a position that helps me continue to do that ongoing. So I was grateful that you reached out. I love doing live conversations. I got my cup of tea because I knew this would be casual and fun. And I'm a book nerd myself. You can't see, but I got my collection here of things and favorite titles. And, reading has just been close to me my entire life. So when you asked, this just made sense to me. So thank you.
I am so happy that you come. And for those of you do not know, that those are just now tuning in, thank you, thank you, thank you. We are going to have a great show. If you do not know a lot about the Doc Bookshop is one of the largest African American owned full service bookstores in the Dallas Fort Worth area. We actually opened up in 2008 and family owned and operated. And guess what, you guys? The family is out of Omaha, Nebraska. And our mission is to inspire, inform, and entertain our customers through books and book related events. This being one of those events, and the celebration of Malcolm X and Centennial celebration all week is one of those events, one of those community and cultural events that we do all year round. We have a lot of planning all year round. We also sell vinyls. We have a vinyl section. We have audiobooks and ebooks online. We have a whole greeting card section as well as the children's section. So go to our website. We have a lot of just different things if you want to learn more about the Doc Bookshop and all the events we have coming up. I'd say we do 365 family, culture, and community. So again, check us out when you get a chance. So let's just jump right into it. I want to learn more. Tell us more about the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation and all the core initiatives.
Well, I'd have to. We got 3 hours. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, it's
um,
our world.
we don't have that kind of time. No, the organization was founded in 1971 by Rowena Moore. And so she was a pioneer, a Black woman in Omaha. And her original kind of mission was helping women get jobs in the packing plants. And so she had a few decades of community activism in her own right. She was the first Black woman to run for city council. She had her own grocery store. She was a true community warrior, I would say. And toward the end of her life, she founded the Malcolm X Foundation. And so it was in 1984 that she originally purchased 9 acres around
Wow.
the landmark where his house was, which was 3448 Pinckney Street.
Hmm.
And immediately she reached out to Malcolm's family, especially the oldest of the 6 daughters he had, Ambassador Atala Shabazz. And she notified Betty Shabazz as well. And so early on, when the historic marker was erected and the state recognized where Malcolm was born, and this was maybe a couple of decades after the autobiography came out, the Malcolm X
Hmm.
autobiography. So the first
Okay.
chapter, so the first chapter says it's called Nightmare, and it literally says where he was born. So and so the marker got placed in '84. Rowena and her family read the book. They found the address and they said, "Hey, this is right here in our hometown. There's no marker. What can we do about it?" So that's how it got started. And then after Miss Rowena retired, then the organization turned into, it was still a nonprofit, and that's when we
Hmm.
started to have that board kind of structure. And the first board chair was Johnny Rogers. I don't know if you know.
Yeah. Yes, I know John.
For others he that don't know, he's a Heisman Trophy winner. He was a name in historic football, and I just feel like he's still around, bubbling. He has an organization called the Jet Foundation. And so, our history is rich as far as the connection of the Malcolm X Foundation and the people who are involved or who work with Miss Rowena. And so that's the nutshell of how the organization got started.
Okay, and so what are your that's how it got started. So can you just name, I know there's a lot, but can you just talk about 5 core initiatives that
Oh,
you
sure.
have in 2025?
So, it's hard to highlight everything, like you said. So just a few would be priority. So we have three arms of the organization. One is cultural preservation, the other is civic engagement, and the last is leadership development. So all of our programs funnel under those initiatives or those values. And so with the first one, the cultural preservation, by default, we are responsible for making sure that we preserve the grounds where Malcolm's house stood, right? We have a lot of dismantling being a method of fear, a method of attack on how we preserve our cultures as a people.
Girl, them you.
And so it's
Mm,
very important that we number one prioritize the ownership and longevity and sustainability of the historic marker, right? There's not a lot of memorial sites around the country that are privately managed, or at least the city or the state, sometimes they will make sure that they help support stuff like that. And ours does. Nebraska is a state that's supporting our historic landmark, but it wasn't always like that. Rowena did her own fundraising, and even when we became a state landmark, there was still a lot of hurdles with making sure that people were proud of what was happening.
mhm, mhm,
So that cultural preservation has that first arm of it, which is the grounds itself. And the second arm of it is the knowledge, the
mhm,
information. I watch a lot of interviews of people who talk about how Malcolm X prioritized awareness in his speeches,
mhm.
self-awareness. And one of the things I love so much about how he delivered that was, one of the famous speeches, "Who taught you to hate yourself?"
Ooh,
And that in itself has a lot of connotation towards the individual digging deep and
mhm.
figuring out their identity as a Black person, and even all nationalities now, they have to ask themselves this question in order to find dignity in the work that they're doing. No one told you that you did not have this opportunity to empower yourself and your community. You just have to believe, right? And it is easier said than done. It's not like we are not collectively um, just put on Front Street generation after generation, and we're
Mm,
forced to choose. Do I have enough money to make ends meet, or do I, splurge a little bit? And those things play into identity, because you spend a lot of time making money. That's what we have to do to
right.
survive. But what speaks to a person's character is what they do with their time. And so Malcolm was always trying to encourage people to dig deep, study yourself, study your history, study American history too, so that we are prepared for how to collectively approach issues. So that cultural preservation was a part of that. And then the third layer of that is when people visit, we give them a full history of not only Malcolm X, but the Black diaspora, how it showed up in Omaha, Nebraska. Because I don't know about you, or well, every time I say I'm going out of town, I say I'm from Omaha. They're like, "Oh, there's Black people in Omaha." And it's like, "Oh yeah, here we go." So of course now I say, "Well, yeah." And Malcolm X was born there. Did you know that? And so we go down the list of famous Black people, and you know,
Let
uh,
me let me stop you right there because I always get that, and I did a national platform, and it was you had to name 5 things that you hate the most that people would say in 5 words, and I said I don't know how I narrowed it down, but it's like I didn't know Black folks in Omaha because I always got that being from
uh-huh,
Omaha, Nebraska, and at one point Omaha, Nebraska had the highest population of African Americans in the West. So it's not by no coincidence that his father, Earl Little, which we're going to get into this a little bit later, Earl Little picked this location, and his wife was, under Marcus Garvey. And
mhm,
so how did they end up in Omaha, Nebraska? But we'll go over that in a little bit. But
yeah,
I just want to stop there. But right now, we have JoAnna talking about core initiatives in for the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation as we kick off Malcolm X Centennial Celebration. So I got you at 3. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I had to throw that
Yeah.
out there because that
Thank
just touched a core in me because I still get it to this day.
Yeah. So that cultural preservation was one of our first arms. Again, the historic landmark being one, the understanding of self awareness as a Black people being another, and then the third area of that is making sure that we are telling the proper historic context of Black people's migration to Omaha. A lot of people moved to Omaha from the South to the Midwest and North in the early uh, World War One area or timeline, and so Malcolm X's parents were a part of that. So I say a lot that Black people were here on purpose. Malcolm X was born in Omaha on purpose, and we still thriving in North Omaha, all over Omaha, really. Uh, so
I
yeah.
know I'm hating it. I'm kind of jealous.
Jealous of what?
I mean, there's a lot going on since I've left. I've been gone for
Oh, okay.
many years.
Okay, understood. So the other two programs, we have the civic engagement arm, and then we have the leadership and development. And so the civic engagement is also super important. Malcolm was not shy about talking about our involvement in the systems that are supposed to facilitate our well-being and freedom of choice and speech. Given so the ballot or the bullet. It's one of the most famous speeches that Brother Malcolm gives, and he's talking about civic engagement in
Mhm.
that speech. Um, Also, Message to the Grassroots, which was delivered in Detroit in 1963. Those two speeches, talk a lot about civic engagement, being aware of issues going on in your local city and how it impacts the national conversation and movement. So we do things like political, or excuse me, specific policy issues related to local and state. We have town halls about those. We invite elected officials often to talk about issues, legislative bills. And so, as a nonprofit, our focus is bringing awareness so that people can choose how to be active in their community if they have the right information. So, we've done town halls. We've done public elected official town halls, special issue town halls. We also have done some get out the vote campaigns. And more recently, I've been encouraging the team to develop a 5-year strategy,
Mhm.
because at this point, we need to be working on, I say we, as in the Black community at large, we
Mhm.
need to be working on more than just a few years of strategy, right? We got children who are 3. I have a daughter that's 3.5,
Mhm.
and I think about what the world's gonna be like when she gets older,
Mhm.
And if we're as adults not doing our part to educate ourselves, then how can we then even prepare the next generation? So I guess that leads into the last arm, which is the leadership development. And this is primarily done currently through our positions. You can volunteer with the organization, you can join as an intern, and everybody that's involved with what we do, I call them ambassadors, but we all are prioritizing our well being so that we can be good leaders in our communities. And so that leadership development can look like it needs to look like. Sometimes we have a book club, sometimes we have a lecture series. Sometimes we get out into the community and we host a peace rally, and that's what needs to happen. And I think that leadership is one of those, undertones that Malcolm X is always trying to help everybody position themselves to be in their own lives, to be
Mhm.
self sufficient and to be their own leaders.
Mhm. So, thank you. And you touched on something that is near and dear to me. And you hit on a couple of his speeches while you were covering some of your core initiatives. And one of the things I want to say is what he said about education. He said, if you're in a country that reflects the consciousness towards the importance of education, it is because a woman is aware of the importance of education. But in every backwards country, you'll find the women are backwards. So he spoke very loudly about the importance and the value of women, and that's through his international travel. So, and I want to speak, how did he come to that mindset? How did he come to that level of thinking? How did he start evaluating and just appreciation of women? And so that leads me, and you talked about the education, but I also want to start talking about Malcolm X early beginnings. If you guys have not got this book, and we talk about education, and this is a fun fact. When you was telling me about your 3.5-year-old daughter,
Mm-hmm.
I was recently at the American Booksellers Association conference. And in that conference, you know what they said the highest reading age group now in the United States is?
What, toddlers?
Yes. Can you
Okay.
believe that? I said, I looked at them numbers. I gotta send that to you one day, Kanika, so you can put it in context about what you're doing, like how. And when you said, as we carve out our future and where we're going, what is our destiny, and we have to start educating. Right now, that's the highest educated area. Right now is infants that are buying books, right? I was like, and then I started seeing just this past week my bath books in the bookstore were flying off the shelves. Like,
Oh yeah.
is it okay? This is where they're getting their numbers. Like, I'm totally sold out. And my children's section, I wish I had a screen, show you a screenshot of my children's section. It goes across the whole wall. So
Mm,
books like this across the whole wall. And I can't keep those books in stock, but we still have to educate and get the folks involved and deal with civic engagement like you talked about, deal with leadership like you talked about. So, but before I go on, I want to back up because you said one core and key thing, and I want you to dive into that just a little bit more. And it is in Malcolm X childhood when he was born in Omaha, Nebraska. His Before he was born, his family actually migrated to Nebraska.
yeah.
Why did that happen? Can you tell us a little bit of backstory as to why that happened? I know they were on the East Coast with his mother, but I do want to, as we honor women, to
Mhm.
honor his mother. And Louise Little, she was she spoke like 5 languages. She was super intelligent, but trauma set in. But I don't want to go down that route. You know what? I think we're going to end up being here for 3 hours, like you said.
Oh, we can't now. I got to go to sleep.
I know, right? We got a lot,
I
but yeah, a little bit, little bit. Let's just dive into how did they end up in Omaha, Nebraska?
Yes. So in 1919, there was the lynching of Will Brown. And when you hear about the riots of 1919 or the Red Summer of 1919, historians will mention Omaha, September 1919, as one of those, what to say, prominent stories that, propaganda was big back then too. And the newspapers were facilitating fear through these front page stories of lynchings that happened in different cities. So Omaha had one of those. But by that spreading the news across the country, it got to Marcus Garvey, who at the time was in uh, the Harlem area and East Coast. And at that time, he was also starting chapters of the UNIA, Universal Negro Improvement Association. And the mission was to facilitate Black liberation through programs in self defense and a number of things, economic empowerment. And so Louise Little was a writer for the Marcus Garvey Negro World newspaper. And so she was a part of the movement. She was born in Grenada. She was a part of the African diaspora that migrated to Canada area. And so Montreal is where she met Earl Little, Malcolm's dad. Earl was a carpenter by trade and a minister, and also had recently joined the Marcus Garvey movement. Um, and they met in Montreal and then migrated to Philly and began their family there. They married in Philly. And the first three siblings were born there. And as jobs began to migrate towards the Midwest, and particularly Omaha and Nebraska, they were a part of that migration. And so Malcolm was the fourth child born in Omaha, and they moved there. They originally moved there, excuse me, in 1921. So 2 years after the Will Brown lynching, they were summoned to go start a chapter in Omaha, Nebraska for the UNIA. And then Malcolm was born 3 years after that. So 1925, May 19th. So that's the beginnings of Malcolm's lineage by way of the Marcus Garvey movement. And a lot of people don't realize that his parents moved there on purpose. And, shortly after that Will Brown lynching, the whole community was in uproar, and I think it made sense that Marcus Garvey wanted to start a chapter of Black unity and empowerment after something so tragic had happened to a man who had rheumatoid arthritis, and he was accused of assaulting a white woman. But when you have ailments like that, you're not an aggressive person,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Exactly.
So that's one of the historic moments in Omaha history that people are ashamed of because they have to talk about the truth, right? Because that photo, if you Google it, is nothing short of horrific, where folks are posing behind a burned body. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the books that details what I'm saying here pretty well is out of print, but it's called "Make It Plain."
Mm-hmm.
And it's by William Strickland,
Mm-hmm.
and he allowed this book to be turned into a documentary as well. It's a PBS release called "Make It Plain." It was done in like 1994 or 96, something like that.
Right.
Yeah, so that sort of history is rich. We have to explain that because the Spike Lee joint. We love Denzel and how he portrayed our hero. He did an excellent job. Spike Lee did an excellent job. And because that film was already 3.5 hours,
Mm-hmm.
he had to cut certain things. So a lot of the Omaha beginnings are not um, that thorough in, the film, unless you start to get into documentaries and research material like the Make It Plain book.
I want to say that lynching that occurred in 1919, there was a professor he actually came to the bookstore, to the Doc bookshop, and to deliver his DVDs. So I can't remember his name, but he has a DVD on the Will Brown lynching.
Mm,
And yeah, it was atrocious. And it's also covered in Without Sanctuary. That book Without Sanctuary talks about the William Brown lynching. But Google is there's so much on social media. There's no reason why we cannot search that. If you don't search that, because that is very pivotal. That is
exactly.
pivotal in a lot of different people's work. I think it was pivotal in Ida B. Wells' work as well.
Mm,
So we have to, really give root to that. And I'm so happy you brought that to the forefront because Marcus Garvey had tremendous leadership.
mhm.
And it is this year that we had the exoneration of Marcus Garvey. And we started it actually last year with um, it was the Caribbean, I can't, it was a Caribbean Foundation and his son Julius Garvey. We
Mhm.
were on the team to force the exoneration of
Oh,
Marcus Garvey. Yes. And so, um, uh, former President Biden exonerated him. So I thought that was a big win, especially in Malcolm X centennial year, just to
wow.
connect those dots,
Absolutely.
and the beginning, how important that was to his upbringing. They were in Omaha 3 years, and these were some seriously intelligent, intelligent people. So I'm
Mhm.
happy you brought that to the forefront. Um, you guys, if y'all hadn't got this book for your kids, get it. Get this book, Malcolm Little. And she also talks about in this book, um, for Malcolm X, how he loved to garden. So he was aware of the earth,
Mhm.
of planting. So they were a family that understood the importance of being self sufficient. So thank you so much. I appreciate all the information. I think that was loaded. So
Oh
after
yeah.
so I think after they left Omaha, they went up to, was it Lansing, Michigan? He
Hmm.
moved to Lansing, Michigan. And what force that was the KKK? Was it the KKK that forced him up out of Omaha? Well, I wouldn't say it forced him out of Omaha. I'm not gonna use that language.
Well, yeah. I
Um,
mean, it wasn't just them. You know,
right,
a lot of people were chased out of Omaha because they were in the Marcus Garvey collective. You know,
right.
so there were a lot of what they call Garveyites at the time in Omaha, and also Nebraska had the highest uh, population of KKK members at that time. Again,
Yeah.
it's documented in that book. Make it plain.
So again, you guys, we are on with JoAnna LeFlore. She is just taking us down the memory lane or the legacy of Malcolm X, and she talked about the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation. I had a chance to. It is beautiful. It is on a beautiful landscape. I could see the vision. The museum is amazing. It's worth a group tour or group visit. So if you want to do anything, especially to celebrate Malcolm X, I advise everyone to try to see if they can go to that museum. They're doing a lot of activities out there. You can go when they're having a celebration, but again, that the landscape. I think I went outside and you could just look and you just see land and building. I think y'all were starting a walking trail. It was just a lot of things going on
Mhm.
at that Malcolm X Memorial Foundation. But we're gonna wrap around that. We're right now we're talking a little bit more into Malcolm X legacy, his experience, and he left. He was in Omaha, and now we're just pioneering into the coming of age of Malcolm X, and as he went to Boston to live with his mother and his not his mother, his aunt,
Big
his
sister.
sister, his
Yeah.
big sister. Now,
Mhm.
have the family connected into the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation, or how has that been received
Yep.
by the family? Um,
Yeah, so Rowena Morris started it right. You know, she made sure the family knew what she was doing because she wasn't a relative. So she actually, one of the things I love, one of my favorite pictures that we have on site is Betty Shabazz visiting in around like 1991, and they were actually dedicating a community garden to her because of
mhm.
the influence of gardening in Malcolm's life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so anyway, we have pictures like that on display. So I say that to say that the family has been aware of this organization since it started. And so even now, I'm grateful to have been building some relationships with some of the daughters. And there's a few people recently, as of late, that I've been trying to connect with other cities and hubs where Malcolm used to live. So Lansing is one of those cities. I'm hopefully looking forward to visiting Inkster, which is
Mhm.
one of those cities as well that they lived in. They have an actual home site there that Wilfred, Malcolm's big brother, owned a house out there. And then he did go to Boston after several years of being in foster care. So I don't know how many of those sites are publicly visited yet. But the families they are aware of the true dedicated cultural preservationists, and a lot of them are in those cities that I mentioned. Even the one you just mentioned about Julius Garvey, he's
Mhm.
presenting in Grenada this year, this weekend actually. They having a
Really?
they having a big kind of coming home celebration in honor of Louise Little and Malcolm X. So we have a colleague named Shamika that's going out there, and they're going to do a real special. I think they're going to stream most of this, but they're doing a special ceremony where um, we're going to bring some soil from the birth site to the soil of Grenada. And I don't understand how people can pull off stuff like this, but her lineup for that conference is a beautiful one. It's educators and people from all over the world really coming to Grenada. Um,
Oh my God, I want to. Oh my God. Oh my God, I want this. Oh God.
and
Okay.
on our Facebook page, I've shared a lot of flyers of other Malcolm
Oh,
X events. And there's a flyer on there. So I wish I could go too, but I can't be everywhere, and I don't really want to. But
I know. I thought you were going to go in, but I think when we talked, you said there was going to be a live stream. Oh,
yeah.
I studied at the University of West Indies in Kingston, and
Mm,
so I used to go up to Mo Bay a lot. With Montego, not Montego, it was Montego Bay, but actually it's Ochi, and so Ocho Rio. We call it Ocho Rios, but they call it Ochi.
uh-huh.
And we met a lot of people from Grenada that was, at Kingston or at the University of Kingston. And let me tell you, as an American, when you tell them you're American, Grenada had a lot to say because I want to say they, United States, historically, and you might have to correct me, I don't know if you remember, but they said that United States bombed a part of Grenada oh, yes, it was like, every time I met somebody from Grenada, it was they had a problem with United States, and
Yeah,
I
they were
cannot remember.
French territory from what I remember. But that's all I really know about that history.
Yeah,
But
I'm gonna have to get on that and just you just sparked some more memories when you
okay.
said Grenada, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I had a hard time with the students, colleagues that were from Grenada. So, oh my God, that's gonna be amazing.
I
That
know.
is just you guys, she touched something in me because I love the Caribbean, I love the islands, and for them to just a tremendous homage to Louise Little. There was a lot of negative things said about Louise Little, and there's a book that's out about three mothers, and it's dealing with Martin Luther King mother, Malcolm X mother, and James Baldwin mother.
Hmm.
And the story that they tell, she was just in how she raised her children with
Hmm.
the knowledge and the information, and the fact that her husband was murdered, and
Hmm.
life was changing after that. And from my understanding, I don't know if you recall how Earl Little was murdered, but I was told it was a severed body there that was there. Is that true?
I mean, yeah, it was. They found him on railroad tracks.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was a traumatic experience. And
Hmm.
then for Malcolm X to eventually visit his mother and see her in that state. But just imagine the trauma. We already dealing with post traumatic, and then that trauma that you're reality that you're realistically living through has got to be something that has was life changing for him to see. And I think the time he spent in prison, right,
Hmm.
was helped him evaluate everything, his whole lineage, his whole family. It helped him evaluate to become the man that he came to be. He didn't come back to Omaha after that. I don't think he had an
He
experience.
did.
No way. I don't recall hearing that. Did I
He
miss? I missed
did.
that.
I went down a rabbit hole for one of our exhibits, and it's still up. And I was looking in through our Omaha Star archives, which is our black newspaper. And anyway, there's a couple photos in there, and also the Douglas County, which is the main county in North Omaha. The Douglas County Historical Society has some documents. Malcolm was invited back to speak in Omaha, June 1964, right after his pilgrimage. He was going on tour across the country. He was talking about OAAU, the Organization of Afro American Unity, and so he was invited by the 4CL group to Omaha. And so that he spoke here. He spoke at the Elks Lodge on 24th and Lake,
Okay.
uh, which happens to be nearby the same corner or street corner that his dad preached the Marcus Garvey movement at. So,
Was it the American Legion?
um, the Elks
The
Lodge,
Elks Lounge.
yeah.
Okay.
So, Malcolm had a full circle moment in his life when he came back to Omaha, and there are articles that document his speeches here, and I find I loved going down this rabbit hole because
Oh my gosh.
there was a man who was, you go to certain cities and somebody's responsible for taking the important people to the right places, the places where
Right.
they want to see the authenticity of a neighborhood. And so there's a man named Charles Washington who
Hmm.
escorted Malcolm X through North Omaha. And Charles Washington, what they call him the Godfather of North O. So he was an activist. He was a sports journalist and a community, I would say, cultural preservationist in his day. And so he took Malcolm X to all these places, and this is how Malcolm was able to meet who the boots on the ground folks. And I wish that someone had documented a little bit more of what happened and from his point of view. But we do have photos of the people he met with, and so that's what we share when you get a tour at the birth site.
Hmm. Charles Washington, and who do you recall who else? Because I know I'm gonna throw these names around.
Oh,
So
well, we believe that he met with Ernie Chambers uh,
okay,
when
and
Miss
Ernie
when he was
Chambers.
still working at the barber shop. What you
Hmm.
say now?
He's still in the legislator in the Ernie Chambers, or
No,
okay.
he did 49 years, and so he is
Y'all,
current.
49, 49, and then now he's a serious activist. No suit, nothing. He come into the chamber taking care of business. Suit and tie, nothing, right?
He never had a suit and tie on. And so if you really want to learn about Ernest Chambers, there's a good documentary called A Time for Burning. If you Google that, you'll probably be able to see that on YouTube or something. But so yeah, Charles Washington made sure that Malcolm X met all the heavy hitters, I would say, at that time. So I love when people ask that question. Well, he didn't even come back. Yes, he did.
Now, have you talked to Ernie Chambers to see if he's? I need to call him Baba Ernie Chambers. Okay, you guys. Um, has anybody talked to him and see if he met him or not? I can't
No,
remember.
he's documented saying that he has, and it makes sense because of the timeline and where Malcolm was at. And my main questions for Brother Ernie are, how what was it like to be in the presence of Malcolm X, and was your exchange worthy enough to inspire you to basically become the senator, and that's what he
Hmm.
eventually did. So maybe we can get him on interview one day.
I'm sure. Look, I'm sure you can. Maybe we'll try to hit that this week. I think that's going to be probably. I do have a conversation with Abigail doing Oyewole, but they haven't. And that's the last poets, but they don't have that experience of actually meeting Malcolm X like your Ernie Chambers and Ernie Chambers, and he was a serious activist, and so he could probably talk a lot more about the history. We need to schedule that. We need to talk about doing something like that
Well, you got to find
together.
him first.
Well, we call that. Oh, I'll find them.
I know y'all will, and then call me. Call me when you
Like,
do.
look, like I found you. I said, one thing is, one person that know one person, and the way Omaha is set up is very familiar, familiar. And I messed up that word, but it's very family oriented. So if you call one person, they'll know another person, and they say, okay, I got her number. Call her, like right now. So,
Right.
um, and before we go, I just want to, I know we're up against some time, and I do want to talk about some things that you got coming up
Yes,
against.
ma'am.
Um, tell us, and I know some of the stuff you've already addressed, like some of your favorite speeches of Malcolm X, and um, some of the things, some of the initiatives that the foundation's involved in. But I want to just dive into his life right before he transitioned, and um, how does the foundation relate to that, his life right before he transitioned? How do they commemorate that, that whole process? Because when he came back, he said, I'm a dead man walking at this particular time.
Mm.
And that was so real. So from the time he got back, you know by February,
Yeah.
he was assassinated. February 21, he was assassinated. So just kind of walk in his last moments. I do want to walk through his life that last year, and
Mm-hmm.
just say, how does the foundation discuss that legacy in that last year, because he had so much to impart upon us. And not because I the reason why I asked you to talk about that, because sometimes we try to soften him up that says that he's about love, but in fact, when he came back, he was about still about equality and justice, but how do we work and interact with other people to make that happen? So I
Exactly.
do want to talk a little bit about that, because this whole week we're going to delve into different aspects of his life. But I
Mm-hmm.
just want to really go back into your perspective that last year, because that's just something to really think about. I say that because they're always leaving messages for us. And I'm just
Mm-hmm.
going to go down this last rabbit hole. I do rabbit holes too. Cicely Tyson, when she transitioned, oddly enough, her last conversation was with Black booksellers. Um, she had passed, but they honored us when we were live. We were still in COVID, but they honored us the conversation with Cicely Tyson and Whoopi Goldberg, and she was really a fan of Malcolm X. And so, right after that, she had transitioned, but she left us with so much powerful words. And I
Mm-hmm.
think her next conversation was with Tyler Perry and Barnes and Noble. But she had passed, and that, to me, that was like, you are Black booksellers. This is the message that you need to carry forth. This is how I want to be remembered. This is what my life did. I didn't write an autobiography then. I wrote it now when I had something to say.
Mm-hmm.
So I just I know I went down a rabbit hole. That's a loaded question, right? That's a loaded question. I'm just trying to shape your understanding of my question.
Understood.
Is that last year, what do you think he was trying to leave us
You
with?
know, I have to explain what we say a lot about Malcolm's transformation. He evolved and he allowed himself courageously to be exposed at every evolution of his being. He was born Malcolm Little. He had the street hustle life as Detroit Red. When he got out of prison, he became Malcolm X, and after his pilgrimage, he became Malik El Shabazz. And all of those sort of names or monikers speak to his evolution as a man. And so after his pilgrimage, people just kind of, they don't talk about that. They don't talk about how he used his travels as a platform for his evolution to speak differently about what it means to be a Black human being, mainly because he saw how unified Black folks were in other countries. He went to 11 African nations during after his pilgrimage. He met with very important people who were focused on liberation. And so when he came back to the States, he was on fire even more. Like I can imagine his ammunition, so to speak, for founding the OAAU and the Muslim Mosque Institute, because those were going to be his new tools of psychological liberation, in addition to the activism that he was getting ready to launch. So, from my studies, and I'll say this very transparently, I am still a student. I don't consider myself an official scholar. I haven't written a book. I am constantly studying and learning. And one of the groups that keeps me engaged with that opportunity is on Clubhouse. It's called the Malcolm X Room on Clubhouse. It's led by Jeff.
Oh,
Yeah, Jeff Pope started it, and so I go in there from time to time, and I think they're going live tonight, actually on Mondays usually. And there are scholars on there who they dive deep into Malcolm's speeches, his travels, um, authors who have written about Malcolm,
mm-hmm.
and they talk a lot about his transformation in that room. And so that question, it's not like I have a concrete answer to how he was evolving. It's more about how we perceived his evolution, because we have to find some sort of light of understanding in order for us to truly relate to Malcolm X, right? Because he lived about 4 or 5 lives in one lifetime.
And he was young when he transitioned. He was
Yes.
young.
Yeah, so a lot of what he experienced, and this is what I think is so magical about his courage or his spirit of courage. Um, he didn't know that he was going to be a beacon for an entire race of people. He just allowed himself to learn and grow every step of the way. And then when he joined the Nation of Islam, that's when he realized, I am responsible for sharing as much truth as I can. And I believe that when he came home from his travel abroad, this is when he actually became a better man, a better human being.
Mhm.
He started to understand what legacy he was leaving behind. His beautiful family, Betty Shabazz and the daughters, they were a part of that, and he didn't take that lightly either. But even when he traveled, he extended his family.
Mhm.
The village grew for him. And honestly, if you have that opportunity to travel and learn and or inspire others, you got some big wings on your shoulders, so to speak,
Mhm.
because now you're a real beacon for hope and transformation. So I wish I would have had the opportunity to interview Brother Malcolm, to see myself what he would have described his transformational journey to be.
Mhm. I like Morgan's Price statement. He was a willing vessel, and I
For sure.
think things doesn't happen for a reason. He was able to meet with some of the greatest leaders that we are studying today. So we're talking about Kwame Nkrumah. We're talking about Patrice Lumumba, and I feel
Exactly.
like you know somebody who's walking in that is Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso. And so I, in terms of looking at his afterlife, which we're going to have another conversation with Mark Whitaker, that has a new book coming out, The Afterlife. But I
Mm-hmm.
think you have really set the stage and set the presence of what we need to focus on, what we need to key in. I think this was a wonderful way to kick off Malcolm X celebration. I am just so honored to I really am, to be on this platform with you, and just how you open up this this celebration. You like open up. Oh, Terry, there you you opened up the celebration for us, and I think you know while a lot of people are still asleep until his birthday, I don't think people really understand that this is 100th year. This is for us. This is a time for us
This
to
is for us.
reflect on his very existence, and then to carve out some of those things that are myth. And I think you just taught setting the stage of why his family ended up in Omaha, and then offering up that backstory about Will Brown lynching. Sometimes we speak, or we are our ancestors' voices, and
That's
and to bring that to the forefront is just amazing. I hope people come back and listen to the things you got to say. But I do want to talk about your upcoming event. I am trying to figure out ways that I can get out of that, because you want to go up there May 31st. This, I'm trying to get out of 100 things. Like, you guys, I really want to go to
yeah.
Ilyasa Shabazz on May 31st in Omaha, Nebraska. I really want to experience that, because I truly love this family, and I love Malcolm X. I lullaby on his message, meaning that I'm listening to him and when I fall asleep at night, because I just
Mhm.
want to just embrace everything, every essence of his existence at this particular time. So tell us a little bit about what you have coming up, and then I'll let you go, because I know you got a
A
lot
big
going
week.
on.
We got a big week. Both
You
of
have,
us.
huh? I thought both of us got a big week.
We both have a big week. Yeah, I'm grateful to be a steward of continuing this legacy. I have to say that Rowena Moore really, she was a powerhouse. She started the Malcolm X birthday celebration
Mhm.
uh, back in the day, and we picking up where she left off, to be honest. So as the 100th birthday, we are kicking it off on Thursday this week. on the 15th, we'll be doing just an open house and press conference. We'll be welcoming Dr. Shabazz as well to kind of kick it off for us. And we're doing a proclamation for Malcolm X Day. And then Friday the 16th, we're going to have a meeting of the minds in the AM, 8 a.m. to noon, a couple breakout sessions focused on historic preservation, local activism, and just getting people in the room with each other, right? We can't say we're going to do something together if we don't even really understand what everybody's doing. So that's going to happen Friday morning, and then Friday evening we're doing a youth poetry program. Basically, we want to support the next generation of orators. You know, the ones who are going to be responsible for telling our stories later. And then Saturday we're having a block party. Saturday the 17th from 12 to 8 on the birth site grounds, by the way, featuring Dead Press is going to be our headlining artist.
Oh, get out of here.
Yeah.
What?
So that's a blessing too, because that group has honestly been a friend of the organization, our extended village, for about 15 years. So I'm grateful that they said yes, and we're gonna kick it off and bring the family in, the full family into that celebration. Food trucks, vendors, you name it. And then Sunday we'll take a little rest. And then Monday, I'm going to go live a few times on his actual birthday, realizing that there's so many cities and places and hubs that are doing stuff. You know, I mentioned Grenada. Jamaica has a festival on the 17th or 18th. Inkster's doing a block party. All the Malcolm X grassroots movement chapters have an event, which is Atlanta, Philly, Dallas, Oakland, Chicago. You can look them up as well. But for us, circling back to May 19th, I do plan on going live on our platforms to feature a lot of these people. And then on from the 17th through June 1st, we're doing bus rides to Lincoln, Nebraska, which is a 45-minute drive from Omaha to our state capital, because that's where Malcolm X's bust was inducted into the Nebraska Hall of Fame. And so a lot of people weren't able to make the induction ceremony, and we're just offering an opportunity for people to go down there themselves and see history made that way. He was the first Black person to be inducted, 27th bust since the creation of that Hall of Fame. And that in itself was a historic moment. So they'll get the download of that 45-minute bus ride to see that. And then we're ending our celebration with two more events. On the 30th, we're doing a film screening of The Visible. It's a documentary that speaks to redlining and the impacts of it in Omaha, Nebraska specifically. But we know that redlining affected multiple cities across the
Right.
and so I love that documentary is a deep dive into that. And then on May 31st, Saturday, we're going to have our gala featuring honorary chair, Dr. Ilyasa Shabazz. Our presenting sponsor is North End Teleservices. And we're just really grateful. My intention was to not have a typical sit down gala. There's no auction. We don't need to auction anything at a Black gala. But we will be celebrating Brother Malcolm. So I'm looking forward to that. We'll have jazz musicians on the front and back end of the dinner program. We'll do a special tribute, a couple awards. And I'm just really grateful that we can end it that way. So, you know, this is something we will never reach this time again. It will never be a 100th birthday of Malcolm X after this. So we have to do it big. And I'm really excited for all the cities, honestly. But we're going to use a microphone, a megaphone, to let people know that he was born in Omaha, Nebraska.
I am so all into that. I told the publisher, I quoted you. I said, JoAnna LeFlore mentioned that she's the executive director, Malcolm X Memorial Foundation, and she knows Dr. Kendi, and she connected him to the Omahans that are in Texas. So I think she just did that leg work just by mentioning the fact, because Dr. Kendi is going to be with us on Malcolm X's birthday, but I am so honored that you mentioned that there's a high migration in Texas from Omaha,
Yeah.
and he was surprised about that, right? Right.
Yeah,
And
he
so,
was. Yeah.
and so I connected the dots that we are actually, that connection to Omaha, Nebraska. And so, I
Hmm.
mean, it was just like it was a big shock, like you're working with those people. So, um, I talked to Dr. Kendi, and I'm just honored. He could have been anywhere in the country,
Hmm.
but and he, as well as I know, he's doing museum. He's been doing big auditoriums. But he said for Malcolm X's birthday, he wanted to be inside of a bookstore, and so, and when just thinking about that, I cried because that is just so big. And Wendy says 100. Terry is asking, when he came back to Omaha in 1964, where did he speak? I think we covered that he spoke at the
The Elks
Elks,
Lodge. Yep.
at the Elks Lodge. That's the is that the I'm dating myself. That's near the American Legion. I'm so
It's on 24th and Lake. I don't think the
sorry.
Legion's over there anymore.
Oh,
Yeah.
she said there's a large contingency in Houston and DFW area of
Yep.
former Omahans. Yeah,
Yeah.
we got to make sure, Terry, we got to make sure the Omahans are in the house when Dr. Kendi is here. I mean, she gave us some loaded nuggets, some stuff I'm ashamed to say that I didn't know or I didn't put it into context, like the Will Brown. I'm happy, that's one thing that I knew about it, right? I knew about it. But to connect that dot with him and Marcus Garvey with that
Mhm.
lynching and Marcus Garvey, man. Oh,
Yeah.
and she said, "Well, I'm sure Ernie Chambers was there." You said that too.
Yeah.
Yes, she did
I
say
did
that.
say, yeah. Y'all fact
Yeah,
check everything I said. I like it. I Before I go, I failed to add the website. It's simple
yeah.
for all of our events. It's mx100.org. So you can get all the information I just shared about our events on there.
mx100.org.
That's right.
mx100.org. And you guys, she shared everything that's going, a lot that I didn't even know that was going on across the country. So, I mean, she is so loving and sharing. I mean, I've been stalking you, okay? And
Oh.
she says Ernie's wife is my cousin. Okay, Miss Terry, we wanted to have a conversation with Ernie Chambers.
Yes,
So if
if you
y'all
can
can
find
help,
him for me, please.
huh?
Yeah, tell Miss Terry we can find Brother Ernie, please.
Yeah, she said if you could find Brother Ernie, we want to. I think this would be a historical conversation if we can get him on a live,
Hmm.
as somebody that we all connect to and have interaction. So, Miss Terry, if you can help us, so I put it out there in the universe, that we're going to, even if we have to call his son. Yeah, he's in Omaha, but after a moment when everybody gets retired and settled, you know, I was with Opalia. I don't know if you know Opalia, the mother of Juneteenth. I was with her, yeah, the other day, and she's like I'm turning 100, and after that, whatever, whatever. And he's probably she's I don't want to say it's too much for me to deal with what she actually said because I truly adore her, right, as a matriarch in Fort Worth. And and that's probably how Mr. Chambers is feeling, like, what I taught, whatever, do
Maybe,
I
yeah.
have left to give. But how many of us are still around that actually walk with him on his centennial celebration? So, Miss Terry, I'm a beg of you to make that happen. I think, even if we can go, are you busy Wednesday? I know you got a full schedule Wednesday, don't you?
You talking to me?
Uh-huh.
Oh yes, ma'am. I am busy
Oh,
this week. But if you call me with information I need, I will answer.
uh-huh. Yeah, I was figuring like we could see if we can get in touch with him, we'll go live again. But because what we changed our schedule with Abio Dune to Sunday is our huge celebration here
Okay.
at the Pan African Resource Connection in Dallas. That is another
I saw
bookstore
that. Yep.
that we are partnering with and visiting. And I don't, Equate is not on here, or I would definitely pull her on this live. She is another wealth of information, and I'm going to try to get with her or go live with her Saturday or Sunday. And I think she's going to be doing some stuff on his birthday too as well. So I'm not going to keep you long because we can go down a whole nother rabbit hole. I think you gave us a lot of information. Is there anything else you would like to share?
Not at all. Thank you for inviting me to the space, and I can't wait to see some returning Omahans, whether it's for Native Omaha Week or the Malcolm X Week. You know, send people
What,
back home
what
to
about all your team? What about shout out your team? Felicia, where is she
team.
at?
I'd be nothing without my team.
Is Felicia in Philly? Is she in Philly or where is she at?
Who?
Felicia.
Oh, Felicia. My Earth auntie, I call her Felicia Casher. She's in Philly now, but she's going to be our MC for the gala, so she'll be back home
Oh,
May 30th.
we should have tagged her in this live. Like,
We
really,
should
I
have.
don't know why we didn't tag her in, but I'm gonna tell her we talked about. Let me
Okay.
tell you something. That girl out there, she is. That's another one that is so giving and sharing and just celebrating the Doc Bookshop. I mean, I've been trying to bring her to the store, trying to create a budget to get her down to the store and
Hmm.
perform. I did reach out to her, but she is another one that's just a creative soul, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of full of intelligence, full of energy. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, yes, Morgan, we are wrapping up. I'm trying to wrap up, but shout out to your team, and I don't
Yeah.
know who else is on your team. Who else is
Well, I
on your
mean,
team?
right now there's a lot of people I would have to thank, but for now I'll just say my board is led by Morgan Chat Price. Excuse me. She's
Oh,
talking to you right now, probably. And she goes back and forth to Dallas. And she has family there too.
oh yeah. I think
Uh,
she came into the store. Did
yeah,
she
that's
come to?
her. Yeah.
Oh,
Ashley Knox, my program manager, Shamika
mhm.
Simpson, my civic engagement outreach policy fellow, and I just appreciate everybody, all the volunteers who pull up and help out. This is why this organization is still alive too. Is because of the volunteers. So
Yeah, I think JoAnna is related to Kay. Yeah. So okay, I'm just answering the question.
right.
But shout out to you. Shout out to everything you're doing. We're gonna probably be watching each other and just sharing each other's information. And I'm so happy. I'm still trying to make my way up there. The
Okay.
31st, I'm trying to get family to get tables and seats and to hold something down,
Okay.
and trying to erase my schedule. And I'm having a hard time doing that. But thank you so much, JoAnna LeFlore, Malcolm X, mx100.org. Check her out, check her bio, and just show that foundation love. And we are all always fundraising. So if you have some little change, or if you have a little, if you have something, go to that website because y'all have a donation button right there on the
Yes,
website, right?
ma'am. Mm-hmm.
If you, let me tell you, you guys, and she didn't, I don't think she said it. This where that foundation is at is beautiful. It is so serene. And what they're doing, I think when I went, they had a Delta set up. So I don't know if the Deltas are doing
Oh
that.
yeah, I remember. I seen pictures of that. I saw when that was. They have a lot of events though outside
Mhm.
at the plaza area outside. Hmm.
So if you have any, it's a 501c3. If you have any funds, please donate. Go to that website and donate. We have so many limited resources, especially with this new regime. So we're going to need each and every one of you to show some love, share when you have plenty. Don't buy Louis. Everybody want to go out and buy the Louis and all those designer brand. And we found out that how they probably paid 10 cents to make it, and they're charging you a lot. But make your money go far, far, and it can start with the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation. I'm sorry I put that out there for you.
Thank you.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye bye. Bye, Morgan. Thank you so much, Wendy.
Peace and blessings.
Terry, she said I will do that. Terry, thank you. Bye bye.